All right, as we reach the top of the hour here, I think we're just about ready to get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Once again, for those of you just joining us, we'll be running a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please just type them into that Q&A in your Zoom control panel. And if you miss anything, don't worry, we will be sending you a link to the recording when it's available. My name is Jennifer Sterling, and I'm an instructional designer at the CE Shop, the leading provider of online real estate education. Today, we're covering some tips and tools to help you prepare and stay sharp for your exam. The first part of our discussion today will be presented by the VA Real Estate Board pre-license instructor, Gail Glassmoyer. And the second part will be presented by Mike Matoush, the Director of Education and Curriculum with the CE Shop. Gail comes to us with many years of experience within the real estate industry in Virginia. She's a certified VA Real Estate Board pre-licensed education instructor and owns her own career services consultancy, Glassmeyer CMS. Now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Gail to get us started.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So, hope everybody is doing great today, having a great day. So, let's talk. Before the exam, there are several things you need to do, okay? So first of all, it's always nice to know where you're going. So I would probably Google or somehow figure out where you're going, how to get there, maybe do a drive-by, that's always good. Make sure that anything you need to take is ready and ready to go as soon as you need to be there. So you're gonna have 2 forms of ID ready, if that's what your state needs, a calculator, if that's what you need. Sometimes they actually give it to you. Please, get a good night's sleep. Staying up and studying till 2 o'clock in the morning when you have to get up to take the test is really not going to help you. Eat something before you go, that's always good. And get there early. You never know what the traffic's going to be like. And please use the restroom before you start. That's definitely good. One of my students didn't, and then he ran out of time. So, review the requirements before you go for your test. Different states and different companies have their different requirements that you need, whether it be PSI exams or Home Pearson VUE or GoAMP. Make sure you know exactly what you need to bring when you go take your test. So, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. So, this is what you need to do. Review the material in small size portions. So in other words, you don't have to be sitting there for 4 hours studying. Trust me, after 4 hours, everything goes right over the head. It doesn't go in. So, read a chapter, do the questions. A little bit at a time is going to be more helpful than sitting down for marathon studying sessions. Reread portions that you might not be clear on. There are things that you know, and then there are things that you're not sure you know. Make sure to go over them. Go to the glossary to review vocabulary words. Make yourself some flashcards. That's great, because what happens is when you write stuff down, some people not only are visual, but if they write stuff down, it sticks in their head. Do practice exams. They are great to do. You start understanding how the wording is going to be. Some of them make you think. The more practice exams you could do, the better. And do bookmark study sheets. Those are always great to do. So, during the exam, have a test-taking strategy. Some questions you're going to find challenging, but some you're going to find are completely and totally easy. If you do find them challenging, put in your gut answer, okay? Whatever first comes to your mind. After you've read the question completely and read all of the answers, put in your gut answer. But mark it, because if you mark it, you can go back to it later. I'm sure you'll have some time. There's also a skip button. You don't want to skip, because what happens is, If you run out of time and you skipped it, well, then it's going to be automatically wrong. So when I had taken my test, I went through anything that I really wasn't 100% sure of, I hit the mark button. So this allowed me, when I was done all the rest of the questions, to go back to the few that I marked. And here's the thing, do not change it unless you actually know, oh my gosh, the answer is wrong. I saw the answer in a question, 3 questions after I had done that question. So my point is, if you mark it, you can go back and change it. But do not wholesale start changing all the marked ones. Why? It's a sign of anxiety, and you're going to end up changing your correct answers. Sometimes you change them into incorrect answer. So only change the answer if you know it's incorrect. So here are some general tips for multiple choice examinations, which they are. Read every question carefully and thoroughly. Know what that question is asking you. Read all the answers before choosing. Some people see a keyword in the question and then they skim through the answers and happen to see another keyword and they think, oh, that's the answer, and they put it down. They could actually be, they could be marking the incorrect answer. So take your time, read them thoroughly, read all the answers thoroughly. If you have to, read the question again. Pay attention to the except, but, or not questions. Just missing one word can totally mess up the entire question. And take your time. You've got this. You actually know so much more than you think you know, but you just don't realize how much you know. So, as if I didn't say it enough, read all answer choices before choosing. So, here's a question. The ability of a defaulted taxpayer to recover their property before its sale for unpaid taxes is, well, okay, you read the question, and now you're looking for what's the key word? So, in the second part of the question, it says the word before. Before is equitable. After is statutory. I know that. So now it's just a matter of, okay, it's got to be A or C. Well, I know it's equitable, and let's see, equitable right of satisfaction. Doesn't sound exactly right. So I look down to C, equitable right of redemption, and that would be the answer. Okay? So here's a question. All of these could contribute to mold growth, except. So you start going down, let's see, old plumbing, that could possibly be mold. Improperly installed gutters, I don't know about that. Leaking roofs, yeah, that could definitely. And then I see low humidity, I'm like, no, I know. It's not low humidity, it is high humidity. So that is the one that would not contribute. So there are several different types of questions. There's the recall comprehension question, the application question, the best answer question, absolute words and qualifiers, elimination questions, and contradicting questions. So let's go over these. The recall comprehension question asks you to recall information. It's basically used for vocabulary and basic knowledge. So here's a question, a recall question. What is another name for personal property? Okay, so now you're like, let me go through and figure out what the vocabulary words are. Well, we know appurtenance means runs with the land. So that's not another name for personal property. We know that fructus naturalis means fruits of nature, and that actually is real property, so I know that's not personal property. And fixtures, fixtures are always residential, and they are annexed to the house, which makes them real property. So another name for personal property would have to be personalty. I always tell my students to call it personality because for some reason they remember personality. They also remember chattels. Chattels is also another name for personal property. So one of my students said to me, well, what's with chattels? And I'm like, okay, so here's what I want you to remember with chattels. It's kind of like cattle. It means personal property. It's movable, or anything that is removable from the property is personal property. That's where you get the chattels. So chattels, personality, whatever you call it, as long as you remember it, that's the whole point. Types of questions, application questions. It requires you to apply knowledge to a situation, and it requires logic in addition to knowledge. So here's a question. Which of the following would be least important to an appraiser of an office building? Well, replacement cost of building, I don't know. Vacancy rate of office building, yeah, that would be kind of important. So first of all, you need to know about what is important to an appraiser. And then you're looking at, okay, projected rental rate. Okay, that would definitely be important. And building management costs, yeah, probably. So the one that would be least would be the replacement cost, because I've identified that the other three would be more important. Okay, so now here's the best answers. So we have two different types of questions. We've got choosing the best answer when there is no good answer, when all the answers are horrible and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I know the answer, but it's not saying it there. So think about what will the course material say? What does it say in the course material? And that's the answer you should go with. Or choosing the best answer when there is more than one correct answer. So one might be a good answer, but the other one is the correct answer, or is the more correct answer, or it might have a few more words in it to make it the most correct answer. So, best answer question. A buyer is purchasing a house and obtains financing through a mortgage broker. Per this situation, which term best describes the buyer? Well, okay, time for vocabulary. Let's see. Well, we know the grantor is the seller and the grantee is the buyer, but it's saying a buyer is purchasing a house and obtains financing. So they're talking about a mortgage. So it would be more of mortgagor. Mortgagor is the buyer. I'll say anything to get you to remember it. So there might be a good answer. We know buyer, but we're talking in this specific question, it's about the mortgage. So mortgagor, very good. So which appraisal method is most appropriate when appraising an office building? Okay, well, cost approach, possibly. Capitalization approach, sounds interesting. Market data and gross income multiplier. Well, I know it's not that, but what do I know? Another name for capitalization approach is income approach. So that would be the most appropriate one. Absolute words and qualifiers. You are going to have questions, and in the answers, it's going to say must, never, always, and only. Those words aren't always a correct answer. Sometimes when they say things like it should, or usually, or generally, that often signals a softening of the answer, which could make it a correct answer. So let's take a look at those. Who can perform a title search in the public records? Well, let's take a look at A. A, the first word is only. Let's take a look at C. It must be performed. And then let's take a look at D. We have all the other words and it says always have to. Now, You would actually be reading the entire answer, but I'm just trying to pull out for you the absolute words. So first of all, in the question, it tells you that these are public records. So we know it is anyone who chooses to because they are the public. But I'm just pulling out the only, must, and always. They have absolute words and they are not necessarily correct. So make sure you read the answers well. So, eliminating to the right answer. Pay attention to words and concepts in the answers that are incorrect. Eliminate them immediately to find the correct answer. You usually know when you're reading the answers, there's usually like 2 answers that just you know are incorrect. Just ignore them and take a look at the other 2 answers. And then you have a 50-50 shot of getting it correct. A primary benefit of a property held in joint tenancy is, let's see, okay, I remember there's pit and joint tenancy, but I'm reading these and it says B, if they are married, they are tenancy by the entirety. Well, guess what? That's a true answer, but that has nothing to do with joint tenancy. I could get rid of that immediately. And then it says the benefit of severalty. Well, I know that even though it sounds like several, severalty just means one person. So I can get rid of B and C. So let me read through and say, A, since there is no pit, each owner can do what they want. Well, I know that joint tenancy has pit, so I know A cannot be a correct answer. So the only answer could be D. They have the right of survivorship because we all know joint tenancy, last man standing, they have the right of survivorship. Contradicting questions. Pay attention to the answers. There might be 2 that are completely opposite. And if one is wrong, the other one could be correct. You just had a sales contract signed by the seller and by your buyer who you just found out is an illegal drug dealer. This contract would be what? Well, you have valid and void. They are the complete opposite. If one is incorrect, the other one might be correct. Well, this contract would be valid. Of course, you're selling this guy a house. Who cares what he does for a living? You are selling him a house, and that is legal. It has legality of object, and that would make the contract valid. Now I will be turning it over to Mike. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. As you said, we will be wrapping up the rest of the webinar with Mike Matoush, who will share with you some CE Shop specific tips and tools. Mike has been involved in curriculum and development and management for the past 15 years, including over 6 years with the CE Shop. We'll take your questions at the end of the session, so remember to type those into the Q&A field if you have them. And now I will turn it over to Mike.
Great. Thank you very much, Jill, and welcome everybody. Good to see you all. We have a pretty large group on there, so I'm guessing there's a bunch of people in the same position here. So I'm going to today focus on a couple of different areas here, and let me figure out how to advance the screen, sorry. So now that Gail's talked a little bit about some of the content areas to help you prepare for the licensing exam, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. One is kind of the reality of where we're sitting with a licensing exam availability through the providers right now. Which is a very hot topic, not just across our industry, but many that use proctoring services. And then I'm also going to talk about what you can do during some downtime that you may end up experiencing while you're waiting for your licensing exam to become available. So first off, with just a quick update on where we're at with the licensing exam provider. So there's 2 major national providers that almost all of you will take your licensing exam, your state licensing exam through, and they're either PSI or Pearson VUE, depending on which state you're in. So both did actually start operations up again. There was a period in time, March and April, we all remember it well, where they were completely closed. So obviously it created quite the backlog of people that need to take their exams. They did start opening up in May, and it's been a gradual reopening, and depending on the region, that depends on you know, how many centers they've been able to open and what capacity they've been able to open. They obviously have to abide by all of the state and local rules that are in place. So what that results in is a backlog of people trying to get in, and you know, a center that could normally accommodate 20 people at one time all of a sudden can maybe take 10 at best. So you can imagine why there may be a backup there. So that's one of the main reasons for the challenges getting in and scheduling those exams. In most areas, you should plan on, and this is a rough guideline, you're going to need to check on your own local area, but in most areas, it's running about 2 to 4 weeks right now. In some, it is more than that. So be sure that you check as far in advance as you can. I can't go through each state and talk about where they're at because we have a lot of states represented here today on the call. But what I can do is refer you to a couple of resources. Both PSI and Pearson VUE have pages available. You've got the URLs here. They'll be included in the link as well when this recording comes out. But a quick Google search, of course, will turn these same links up as well. So per PSI, they have a test center opening page that tells you which of their centers are open. So you can look by your region and see who's there. They also have an updates page that's specifically related to COVID response and also, of course, contact information. They're not the easiest group to get in contact with right now, just because they're dealing with such a backlog. Be persistent, and it may mean, in some cases, driving to one of the open centers to try to get in there and get somebody to talk to. So that's the general updates. So please go look them up, check your region, and hopefully they'll be able to get you in as soon as possible. And we have a mix of people on this call today. Some have already completed their course, their pre-licensing course, and are waiting to get in there to take their licensing exam. And then we have others who are still in process in their course, either just getting started towards the middle or right at the very end. So regardless which situation you're in, I'm going to provide some study tips and tools that you should all take advantage of while you're waiting to take your licensing exam. So first and foremost, finish your pre-licensing course. We have heard of a lot of students waiting to try to finish their pre-licensing course until they're closer to the time that they can get in to take their licensing exam. There's really not a lot of benefit for you to do that. And, you know, since they are running 2 to 4 weeks out at least to get in there to take your licensing exam, we are encouraging all of our students to go ahead and finish your course. Don't wait for to coincide those so that you can take them, you know, back-to-back days or whatever the plan is there. For the final course exam, so for those of you who have already passed and completed your pre-licensing course, great. This part doesn't apply to you. For the rest of you, you'll find yourself in one of two situations. One, you're in a state that does not require proctoring. It's about half, by the way. About half of the states do not require the course examination to be proctored. In that case, it works just like all the other exams in your course. You take it at your own time and pace. There's no scheduling required at all. For the other half of you that are probably in states where the final exam is required to be proctored, there we do use e-proctoring. So you won't have to go anywhere to take that exam. You will take it online. It's actually PSI. It's the same company that administers the licensing exam. But obviously, this is the course exam that I'm referring to, not the licensing exam. So even they, though, are backed up because as a lot of people, including colleges and universities, have moved to e-proctoring solutions, obviously they've gotten a lot more busy as well. The time frame to get in for that is typically going to be within a few days. You're not talking about the same 2, 4, 6 week period to get in there. So it is typically much shorter. That said, they are also backed up for online proctoring. So even that, you do want to plan in advance and get scheduled for that so that you don't wait until the last minute. This is particularly true at the end of the month. So what we see is even outside of the real estate industry, other organizations use the same service for their proctoring. So there's limited resources on that end. So a lot of people have to renew by the end of the month or complete an exam by the end of the month. And due to that, the end of the month tends to be very busy for the online proctors. So definitely encourage you to plan around that as well. But if you're in the beginning or the middle of the month, you're typically going to be able to get in within a week. Next study tip here. So study using your in-course resources after completion of your course. So I said before, we are encouraging you complete your course. Don't wait to try to time it right. Complete your course. You will still have complete access to all of your content in your course, even after the expiration date listed on your course. Once your course is done, you do not lose access to that content. You'll be able to go in, review materials, take certain portions over again, navigate as much as you want to wherever you want to go. Your course will not expire once it is complete. Use the Finding Content in Your Course resource. So in your course introduction, as well as your course wrap-up, you will find a resource. It's usually called Finding Content in Your Course. And what that is it's a map that shows you where each of the topics on your licensing exam, not your end of course exam, but your licensing exam, where that topic is covered within your course. So that you can use your table of contents, navigate directly to that place based on the topic and your familiarity with that topic. Also study sheets. So you've probably noticed study sheets throughout your course. The best place to find consolidated study sheets is on your course homepage, where you're able to see your bookmarked resources. You also have the option to view all resources. Well, at the end of each section, there is a study sheet. So you'll see you can organize it by or expand it by section. And at the end of each section, you will find that study sheet. Those study sheets are completely aligned with your licensing exam topics. So if there are, if there's one topic that has 4 subtopics according to your candidate handbook, that's exactly what you're going to see covered in your study sheet. So those are great resources for you to have. They won't have all of the information you need to be able to apply the knowledge, but they will have the list of topics, and you will know kind of which areas you're more and less comfortable with. And be able to go to those locations within the course to get more information and do more studying on those particular topics. And then take your practice exams until you're completely comfortable. Your practice exams in most courses have to be completed within 80% or better before you're even able to take your course final exam. And that's by design. They're lower stake exams. You can take them as many times as you need to, whereas in many instances for the final course exam, the number of attempts is limited. That's mandated by each state, so it depends on the state. But those practice exams are yours to take as many times as you need to pass. And then even once you've passed them, they're there for you to take as many times as you need to feel comfortable with those. So definitely take advantage of those practice exams. Each time you take a new practice exam, you will be presented with a completely different set of questions. Now, at some point, you might start recognizing questions after you've taken 3, 4 of those practice exams. But even then, the order of those questions will be shuffled, just like it is going to be with your licensing exam. It's important that you don't just go back and take the unit exams, because that's not the reality. That's not what you're going to be faced with when you're taking your licensing exam. When you're taking your licensing exam, they're also going to be all mixed up. So besides just testing content knowledge, those practice exams can also put you in the position to simulate to the extent possible what you're going to have when you sit for your licensing exam. And then finally, take advantage of Exam Prep Edge. And I'll talk more specifically about Exam Prep Edge next. because this is a very powerful tool that almost all of you already have in your course. There are a couple of states where it's not automatically included, depending which, what your original order was. But in most cases, you will find that you already have Exam Prep Edge in your account. And if you don't, you are able to get in there, check it out, even take a free assessment and see how it works. And it's really not very expensive if you're among the few that don't already have it, if you do decide to go with that. But regardless, it's definitely worth checking out. So it is completely like the practice exams and like those study sheets that I mentioned, it's completely aligned with your licensing exam. So if you're in a state that has 11 national topics and 8 state topics on your licensing exam, that's exactly what you're going to see, how it's going to be broken down inside your Exam Prep Edge. So it truly is built to simulate that licensing exam, whereas your course itself is not always in the same order, and it covers some topics that aren't necessarily covered in as much detail on your licensing exam. The reason for that is because your course also has to meet certain requirements from your real estate commissions, from your regulatory bodies, whereas Exam Prep Edge, that's not the case. It's going to be completely aligned with your licensing exam. So please get in there and check it out. How it works is you take an initial assessment. That initial assessment of 100 questions is really just meant to serve as a baseline. It's going to have a little bit of each topic that's on your licensing exam, and it's going to have an indicator to show you which of those topics you scored very well in and which ones you scored okay in, and then of course which ones you should focus on. So once you've taken that initial assessment, you'll have the opportunity to study. There's study resources in there by topic. So of course you want to start with those topics where it showed that you have the greatest area of opportunities. So start with those, then work your way all the way up through mastery of each and every topic. There is a progress meter in there that basically shows you how well you've done. You take the initial assessment, you complete that, and then you master each of your topics, both national and state. And then finally, you take simulated practice exams, and they are designed to present the same number of questions by topic as what your licensing exam is going to present you. So those unlimited practice exams are there to help you through that. As are the study resources, and then you have a nice readiness indicator that'll show you when you're getting close there. So that is some study tips for you that are available within your course and as part of Exam Prep Edge. Outside of that, when you feel completely studied up and you just know you're going to ace the licensing exam, some other things that you can be focusing on. So use this downtime, and depending on your state, you may have more downtime than you want while you're waiting for those testing centers to catch up with their volume right now. So one thing is prepare for your career. A few things you can do here if you haven't already started. Interview managing brokers. It's an opportunity to check out more. Maybe if you were limiting yourself to 1 or 2, maybe take a look and see if you can set up some meetings with some other possible partners, managing brokers. Make sure you have just the right fit there. Get into a groove. So possibly, depending on your brokerage that you sign on with, you might be able to start receiving some coaching. You might be able to start receiving some training materials, meeting new colleagues, maybe attending some meetings. It'll make that onboarding process for you a little bit smoother so that you can really hit the ground running once you are finally able to get through your licensing exam and get your license. Some other things, start building your sphere. You've probably heard about this. You've heard about it in your course. You may want to get a head start on starting to build your network. What are you going to do? How are you going to make connections? Work on your social media presence. Get the word out of your new career, what you're going to be doing. There's really no better time than right now to be checking in with acquaintances. And by the way, let them know that you're going to be getting your real estate license. It's just a great opportunity to use the downtime to gear up to the extent possible while you're waiting. And then know your stuff. So do your research on the current state of the industry. It is changing right now, especially every single day. And even seasoned agents are going to be in the same position as those of you who are waiting for your license. So the more knowledgeable you are about current market conditions, about variances, those types of things that you're going to have clients and customers asking you about, the more up to date you can be with that, the better. So to get there, talk about a few different resources that are available for you. And you know, this isn't all encompassing. You can go do searches, talk to your managing brokers about other resources, but a few that you might check out that are pretty common out there. One is the National Association of Realtors page. Even if you're not going to be a member of the Realtor Association, you can definitely access these resources on their site. And they have a pretty up-to-date page on coronavirus specific impact. And again, that's going to be one of the main questions for a long time now, is what, regardless if somebody's selling or getting into the market for their first, or they're an investor, whatever the case may be, they're going to have questions about the impact of coronavirus. How's it impacting financing? How's it impacting the availability, the inventory, those types of things? So this is one national resource that I would strongly encourage you all to check out, would be your National Association of Realtors Coronavirus Informational page. Another resource that you may want to check out is Keeping Current Matters. So Keeping Current Matters, they do include both subscription and free real estate practice related content. So you're going to find articles, blogs, even some webinars on there. They're a group that's focused on just that, keeping up with the real estate industry and keeping current. And at a minimum, definitely take some time and check out what some of their free resources are available there. They just really do a good job of keeping a pulse on the industry. And then finally, State Real Estate Commission websites. So every state's in a completely different position here with everything. And your Real Estate Commission website, as well as state associations, just like the National Association, the state associations also have information available, regardless if you're going to be a member of that association or not. They're good resources for information on that. And then, yeah, local associations, websites, newsletters, and then local and county, of course, updates as they become available. Stay up to date on that, because you'll find they really do all trickle down to the real estate industry. With that, we are ready for some questions. And I've been watching the board, but I think we're ready to take some questions now.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Mike and Gail, for sharing some great information. As you said, we will take some time now for questions. Just a reminder, if you have any tips and strategies for the exams and things to do to stay sharp during this time, please do be sure to type those questions into your Q&A panel in Zoom, and we will address those as they come up. It does look like we have a few. So let's start off with, are the state and national exams taken separately or all at once? And it looks like Gail would like to answer that one.
Yes, they are. So usually what happens is either the state portion might be first. You may have those questions. And then it literally says you are done taking your state portion, and then you will go right into your national portion. Or it may actually be the other way around, where your national questions will go first, and then once you're done those, it'll say you're done your national portion, and then you will go into your state.
Yeah, and I was just going to add on to one.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure, thanks, Joe. Just to add on a little bit more there, and Gail's absolutely right that is the normal scenario, that you're going to have the state and national portions very clearly partitioned. There are a few states that will combine them all together. Now, typically when you get your results after you take your exam, it is going to break it down, even if the questions are commingled together. The best place to find out what the presentation model is for you would be in your candidate handbook that's available within your course, or also in your Exam Prep Edge course. It's also going to include those details as well. One more thing to be aware of related to state and national is, in most states, Should you end up failing one portion or the other, you're typically allowed to retake only that portion. So if you pass the national and you fail the state portion, typically what you would be able to do is just schedule a time and go in and take just that state portion.
Wonderful. Thank you both. We do have a question specific to the presentation, a question about the acronym PITT. It looks like the student hasn't seen that in her coursework yet and wondering if that was a state-specific term. Gail, would you mind revisiting that?
Absolutely. So PIT, possession, interest, time, and title. In joint tenancy, from a visual standpoint, think of this. All of them, Tom, Dick, Harry, and Henry, they're all the joint tenants. They are sitting around the table all together. They are signing the, okay, they're sitting around the table. They are taking the deed. They are all taking possession at the same time. They all have the same amount of interest. Everything is equal. They're there at the same time, obviously. And the last one, PIT, possession, interest, time, and title. All of their names are on the title. And it will specifically say on the title, Tom, Dick, Harry, and Henry are taking this as joint tenants. And Jill, I think you may have more information about that acronym, maybe?
Oh, I'm not going to tell the story about Brad Pitt smoking a joint.
Thank you. My students love that
Just
one.
a visual memory.
Thank you for that visual, Jill. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
I hope that answers that question. That is something that will be available for more information. You can look that up if you'd like a little bit more detail about that, or you can contact us through support if you'd like some more detail about that. We have another question. Maricela asks, can I use the Exam Prep Edge at any time during the course?
Sure, I can take that. And yes, you can access it. You can take your initial assessment even before you start your course. Sorry, we would not encourage that because then you don't have a very good assessment of your base level of knowledge. Technically speaking though, yes, it is available for you prior to completing your course.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. Excuse me. Are the questions on the licensing exam the same as the questions on the course exam or close to it? Mike, if you'd like to address sort of how we structure that.
Sure. Well, as you can imagine, the real estate commissions and regulatory bodies who manage their licensing exams keep those under pretty strong lock and key. Of course, we'd love to see those exams, and we do our very best to align our course content and our practice exams with those questions to prepare you the very best we possibly can. They will not be the exact same questions. We use pooled exams, as do the licensing exam, as you will see on the licensing exam as well. So you'll see a large variety of questions. So they're not going to be word for word. I did see another question in the board about, what's going to be on the exam that's not in the course. The answer to that is we hope nothing. Obviously, the courses are designed with you in mind so that it gives you the best opportunity possible of passing the licensing exam. That said, the licensing exam is notoriously difficult, the real estate exam, and that's more true for some states than others. But there are different types of questions that you may encounter that might be phrased slightly different, and that's why this session is really valuable to kind of go through some of those things that Gail went through about what to watch for, so that when they come up, you're prepared for them. But the goal is that all of the content will have been presented to you, so that nothing is new to you when you get in to take your licensing exam. The only possible exception would be the licensing exam providers use some experiential questions that do not count for or against your score. You won't know what they are, but from time to time they will throw in, and I think all the time actually, they throw in a handful of questions that they're testing that may not have been covered in the content yet. And it's quite possible when you see one of those that's what that is one of those experiential questions that they're testing. So hopefully that answers your questions, a couple of them there.
And we do have a follow-up question asking if the CE Shop questions are the same layout as the exam questions, and I think that sort of segues into the information that we're given from the exam providers. Would you like to speak any more to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the goal is to simulate the experience to the extent possible. So what you're going to see on the licensing exam is a mix of recall questions, which would be knowledge-based. Those are good ones. If you study your glossary, use flashcards, terminology, those types of things are going to really help you with that. And then you're going to see application-based questions, which require you to basically think through a scenario and know your stuff to be able to answer the question. And just like the licensing exam, our practice exams and our final course exam do have a mixture of those different types of questions.
Wonderful, thank you, Mike. We do also have a couple of questions about e-proctoring, about how a student would know if they are required to take, if there are e-proctoring requirements in their state. The specific student is studying for his New York license, for her New York license. And also a question about the, quote, standard timeline for taking the proctored exam after course completion.
Yeah, so the best place to see what the requirements are in your state, there's two places within each course where you should find that information. The course orientation, and you can go back to that through your table of contents at any time. Typically, most courses have 2 lessons that are part of their orientation. They have kind of a general one that says course orientation, and then the second one includes the course details. That course details lesson within your orientation will specify the exam requirements, including if that course examination is proctored or not proctored.
Thank you, Mike. Great information. And sort of a more broad question, what's an effective way to retain information from each unit? Should we take notes or just focus on practice exams at the end? Great question.
I think I might take that one. This is Gail. So here's the thing. My best advice to you would be know yourself. How do you learn? Or if you're the type of person that learns by doing question and answers, do a lot of the practice tests. If you write things down, or if you're visual, you might want to read or write everything down. It's really going to be up to you. There's no right or wrong way. I would just know yourself well. That's the advice that I would give.
Thank you, Gail. Great advice. What if I see a question that doesn't appear to have a correct answer? Would you like to take that one, Gail?
Julie, you want to?
Give me the question again. I'm sorry, I was in the question box answering some privately. I'm
No
sorry.
What if I see a question that doesn't appear to have a correct answer?
Oh, well, there you go. You know, and Gail, certainly, I know you could have done this. If there appears to be no correct answer at all, what Gail would tell you to do is think for just a moment, because you know what the correct answer is, but then go back in your mind to what the course said about that. And oftentimes there's some sort of synonym that you're missing. And I think she gave you an example of that when there was not really the answer you were looking for. And this was in an appraisal question where the closest they came was capitalization approach, and you would have been thinking income approach. So what you want to do is go with the best possible answer, even though it's not entirely correct.
And just whatever you do, do not leave it blank. And Gail had mentioned that. Always answer the questions and mark it for review so that you can go back to it. It happens fairly often that you say, oh, I'm going to have to come back to that one. Always answer it. Never leave it blank, obviously.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And it looks like we have time for just a few more questions. What happens if I don't pass the exam?
So I can talk about from the course perspective. So if you don't pass your course exam, it's going to completely depend on the rules of your state. In most cases, there is at least one retake allowed from within the course. So you do, and that said, I mean, even if there is a retake allowed, we strongly encourage you to complete those practice exams multiple times until you're comfortable, because if you're doing well on those practice exams, that's a really strong indication that you're going to do well on the course final exam. It will tell you in your in leading up to the exam in your course wrap up, it'll tell you what the rules are for your state. Your course will tell you if you have unlimited attempts, if you only have 2 attempts, 1 attempt, whatever it might be, you'll find that there. Now, if you're in a state that has a limited number of attempts on your course final, that would require that you go through the course content again. We do make it available at no cost, but you're all in the course right now. You're putting a lot of time and effort into it, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. So our best advice is to don't put yourself in a situation that gives you the best chance possible of passing that course final the first time, even if you are in a state that allows retakes.
Wonderful, thank you. And when I finish my exam, will I know what questions I missed?
Mike, could you answer that? Because I'm not sure about the different states.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the state and what type of feedback that they give you. In most cases, what you're going to receive, you're not going to receive information on which questions that you missed. What you're going to get is a readout by topic of how you did. Obviously, they're going to tell you if you passed the state portion, the national portion, or in those states that combine them, if you pass the whole thing. They're going to tell you that. And then in almost all cases, they're also going to give you a breakdown by topic area of how you scored, the number correct, the number incorrect. And obviously, if you find yourself in that situation, it's nice to know which areas you need to focus on, and that then you can go right to that place in your course to do that additional studying.
Great. And we do just have, it looks like one more, and this is maybe a very similar answer. What's the % that you need to get in order to receive your license? And where would you find that information?
So both this in-course final exam and the licensing exam are going to be the same. They are synced up for our students in most cases. And in most states, it's either a 70 or 75%. There are some states that have odd numbers. There's one that has a 72% pass rate. So they do vary a little bit by the state. That's going to be in your wrap-up section leading up to your course final exam is where you're going to find the course score required. And then you can refer to your candidate bulletin, which is published by either PSI or Pearson VUE. It's either called the candidate bulletin or the candidate handbook. That's going to have all of that information about the actual licensing exam. And that resource is attached to your course, but you can also do a quick search for candidate bulletin and your state, real estate, and you'll find that easily enough. And that's going to have a lot of information about the day you take the exam that's unique to your state. So you'll know how many questions by topic are going to be on there, what the passing score required is, if calculators are allowed or not, if scratch papers allowed, that type of information, that's where you're going to find it, is in your candidate handbook. Also in the course, but the candidate handbook is what we link to from within the course.
Fantastic. This is a question that we get fairly often. Is there a lot of math on the national or state test, the math questions?
Well, I would say somewhere around 7 to 10 questions. I guess it really depends upon the state. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, 7 to 10 is about right. And the thing is with math is sometimes the question itself is more around like your ability to calculate prorations and understanding the concept behind that than it is doing the actual math associated with getting to the right answer. But yeah, for the math that the questions that are uniquely identified by mathematics, yeah, probably no more than 7 questions in there. But that doesn't mean you don't have to be able to do general math to answer some of the other questions, like the proration questions.
Absolutely. And it looks like we've just got one left, so we'll be finishing up on time. Would you recommend in the downtime before taking the exam to get our LLC and business bank accounts set up? So essentially to do the business portions, to do the legal things and business things before passing their exam.
Mike?
Jill and Gail, you guys are practicing. I'll leave that one to you guys.
Well, Jill, what do you think?
What, take the time, is this the question about taking the time to get things set up first? The bank account, the LLC?
Yes, yeah.
I can't see why you wouldn't want to do that. Yeah. As long as you know that you feel good for the exam. I just hate to see you distract yourself with other things until you know you feel 100% for that exam. So yes, it's a fine thing to do, to go ahead and get started with that. Just make sure you're in a state that permits you to operate as an LLC if you are in fact not a broker. And I'm sure you've already checked that out. And if you haven't, you can email us at instructor@the.ce shop and we'll tell you where to get that information.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jill. And just a reminder to everyone, a lot of these study resources are going to be available to you within your course, in your resources in the View All Resources section. For example, Sue reminded us, we've got some great math review resources for you available within your course, a math cheat sheet. And you can always contact us through your support links if you need additional help with specific math problems or specific concepts within your course. And that will wrap up the questions for us. Gail, Mike, Jill, Sue, is there anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
I'll just say thank you all for entrusting the CE Shop with your real estate education. And we love to hear from you, especially after you've taken your licensing exam. So feel free to reach out to our support team or to your instructor and let us know how it went. And if there's anything that you felt was, was not adequately covered, we are always hungry for the feedback.
Thank you.
And good luck to all of you. Hopefully you can get in there as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. I'd like to thank Gail and Mike again for joining us today. Your knowledge, expertise, and the willingness to share it with our student community is greatly appreciated. For everyone joining us today, please look for an email from us with a link to this webinar recording and keep an eye out for invites to additional webinars in the near future. We'll also be sending out a survey to you and we'd appreciate any feedback that you can give us so we can continue improving these webinars for you. Thanks again for joining us today and we will see you next time.